One bright and clear Nevada Sunday, a 26-year-old woman with her left hand bandaged from a gunshot wound boarded the overnight Golden State passenger train from Phoenix's Union Station to Los Angeles, together with trunks and various pieces of luggage. During the journey, this luggage came under suspicion from baggage handler H.J. Mapes due to their foul smell and some fluids escaping from them. He alerted the district baggage agent in Los Angeles, Arthur Anderson, that the trunks may contain contraband deer meat. At the time, deer meat was frequently smuggled aboard trains running to the West Coast. The trunks were tagged to be held until they could be opened for inspection. On arrival, the owner was asked for the key, but she said she didn't have it on her because her husband had it. She then abruptly left. Burton McKinnell, Winnie's brother, picked her up at the train station, minus the trunks, unaware that anything was amiss. She departed with her brother, leaving her trunks behind. At around 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, Anderson called the Los Angeles Police Department to report the suspicious trunks. After picking the locks of each one of them, the police discovered the remains of 2 female bodies. Meanwhile, McKinnell had dropped his sister off in downtown LA, where she disappeared into the afternoon crowds. The crime became known as the Phoenix Trunk Murders, and the events took the nation by storm, being sensationalized in the press. One of the 2 victims discovered had been crudely dismembered, and the grisly case would become one of the most famous in Arizona history. Winnie, the owner of the trunks, was born in Indiana on January the 29th, 1905, to a strict Methodist family, her father being a minister. When she was 18, she married Dr. William Judd, a World War I veteran, more than 22 years her senior, and they moved to Mexico. William was reportedly a morphine addict as a result of war injuries and had difficulty keeping a job, forcing the couple to move frequently and live on an uncertain income. The marriage was further strained by Winnie's health problems and her inability to have children. By 1930, the couple were mostly living separately, although they remained married and kept in constant contact. She moved by herself to Phoenix, where she worked as governess to a wealthy family. It was there that she met John Howerin, a 44-year-old businessman in the timber industry who was active in the city's political and social circles. Although married, Howerin was a known playboy and philanderer, and they became friends, eventually having an extramarital affair. After a few months, Winnie began working as a secretary at the Grinnell Medical Center in the city. There, she met Anne Leroy, an X-ray technician, and her roommate, Sarah Samuelson, who had moved together from Alaska after Samuelson contracted tuberculosis. The 2 women were also friendly with John Halloran. Winnie moved in with her 2 new friends for a couple of months in 1931, but differences developed between the 3 of them, and Winnie soon moved to her own place, which was located a short distance away from the rented bungalow at 2929 North 2nd Street, shared by Leroy and Samuelson. According to the police, on the night of Friday, October the 16th, 1931, 27-year-old Leroy and Samuelson, who was 24, were murdered by Winnie after an alleged disagreement among the 3 women over Halloran's affections. The prosecution at the murder trial would suggest that quarrels over men and the relationship between Leroy and Samuelson broke up the friendship of the 3 women, and that jealousy over Halloran was the motive for the killings. Both of the victims had been shot with a .25 caliber handgun in their home. According to prosecutors, Winnie and an accomplice had dismembered Samuelson's body and put the head, torso, and lower legs into a black shipping trunk, placing the upper legs in a beige case and hat box. Leroy's body was stuffed intact into a second black trunk. The evening of Monday the 19th of October was when the local police first entered the bungalow where the two friends had lived. Neighbours and reporters were also allowed in and destroyed the original integrity of the crime scene. The next day, the property owner put newspaper ads in the Arizona Republic and the Phoenix Evening Gazette, offering tours of the crime scene for 10 cents per person, attracting hundreds of curiosity seekers. The police reckoned that the victims were shot while asleep in their beds. The mattresses from the two beds were missing the night the police entered. One was later found with no bloodstains on it miles away in an empty building site, whilst the other was not found. No explanation was ever offered as to why one was found so far away, nor what became of the other mattress. With the news of the events in Phoenix splashed all over the front pages of their newspapers, together with a warrant issued for her arrest, Winnie, who had been hiding out for several days, was finally apprehended by the LA police on Friday the 23rd of October. The murder investigation and trial created sensationalized newspaper coverage with the suspicious circumstances suggesting that at least one other person may have been involved. The trial began on January the 19th, 1932, at the Maricopa County Courthouse in downtown Phoenix, and spectators lined up in large numbers for a chance to get a seat in the courtroom. The dismemberment aspect of the double killing was never fully addressed in court because Winnie was tried for only one murder, that of Leroy, whose body was not dismembered, and in the end, she was never tried for the murder of Samuelson. The state argued that the accused acted with premeditation because relations between the three women had deteriorated over some weeks, as they had argued over the affections of Howerin, all of which culminated in the murders. The prosecution also maintained that Winnie had herself inflicted the gunshot wound to her left hand to try to strengthen her claim of self-defense. Her lawyer countered that she was innocent because she was insane, but did not introduce this argument for the record, and the accused did not take the stand. Her story changed repeatedly during her trial, as sometimes she claimed self-defense, and other times she claimed that she was insane. On February the 8th, having deliberated at length, the jury found Winnie guilty of the murder of Leroy. She was sentenced by the judge on the 17th to death by hanging, even though the defense urged him to commute the sentence to life imprisonment. An appeal was unsuccessful, and she ended up on death row in the Arizona State Prison in Florence. The death sentence was subsequently overturned after a 10-day hearing found her insane and mentally incompetent, and she was then sent to the Arizona State Mental Hospital for the Insane on April the 24th. It was during the trial that it came out that Howerin and Winnie had been having a secret affair, and he came under suspicion of being complicit and was charged by a grand jury as an accomplice to murder on December the 30th, following new testimony from Winnie. A preliminary hearing on the charge against him, held in mid-January 1933, Winnie was the star witness over the 3 days and emotionally told her story, saying, "I'm going to be hanged for something that Jack Howerin is responsible for. I was convicted of murder, but I shot in self-defense. Jack Howerin removed every bit of evidence. He is responsible for me going through all this. He is guilty of anything I am guilty of." Winnie testified that she had gone to Leroy and Samuelson's bungalow for a get-together, and that a fourth woman who had also been invited, had already left. She recounted there was an argument about an introduction of Howerin to another woman. A gun was pulled, and all three women were shot, Winnie in her left hand, and Leroy and Samuelson both fatally, and she claimed self-defense after they had physically attacked her. According to Winnie, she met up with Howerin shortly after the killings and returned to him to the bungalow. After seeing the bodies, he went out to the garage, returned with a trunk, and told her not to tell anyone. Under cross-examination, Winnie admitted repacking Samuelson's dismembered body in a trunk and other baggage 2 days after the murders. Howerin did not take the stand in his own defense, no doubt fearing self-incrimination. His lawyer told the court that Winnie's story was nothing more than the rantings of a mad person, and argued that since she had testified that the two women were killed in self-defense, there was, in fact, no crime committed. So therefore, Howerin could not be tried for anything, requesting to the judge that the charges against his client be dismissed. This happened on January the 25th, 1933, and the judge freed him, saying that the state's case was inconsistent and that trying him would be an idle gesture. Even though he was officially exonerated, he fell out of favor in Phoenix, shunned by his business associates, shorn of his social status, and abandoned by his friends. Due to Phoenix's relatively small population at the time, of around 47,000 people, members of the local police knew Howerin well and were well aware of his associates, friends, and girlfriends. Some of the officers also knew the victims and even believed that Winnie hadn't killed anyone, even in self-defense, but was only covering up for Howerin and possibly others. His release was considered by some to be a miscarriage of justice, and his exoneration a political cover-up. After all, his car had been spotted at the crime scene the night of the murders, and again the next day, suggesting that he might have had some involvement. He died in 1976. Days before her execution, Winnie was recalled to court for an insanity hearing, during which a psychiatrist affirmed that her relationship with Jack Howerin was at the heart of the murders, and that she loved him more than her husband ever had. The death sentence was later overturned after she was found mentally incompetent, and she was committed to the Arizona State Asylum for the Insane in Phoenix, the state's only mental institution at the time. This is where she stayed for almost 3 decades, or at least most of the time, as she managed to escape from the institution 6 times between 1933 and 1963. In one instance, in 1952, she made a rope out of sheets, climbing out of a 3rd-floor window, and then walking all the way to Yuma along the old Southern Pacific Railway tracks. The last time she escaped lasted for over 6 years. Using a key to the front door of the hospital that a friend had given her, she ended up in the San Francisco Bay Area, where she became a live-in maid for a wealthy family, living in a mansion overlooking the bay, using the name Marianne Kane. After 6 years, a police investigation in 1969 finally led to her discovery and identification, and she was extradited back to Phoenix and locked up in the more secure accommodation of a jail. Winnie requested a sanity hearing and that her case be reviewed by the state parole board, engaging the services of well-respected San Francisco defense lawyer Melvin Belli. Her case was reopened on October the 26th, 1971, and parole was initially denied. It took 2 years, but Belli managed to prove that Winnie was sane and should be let out of jail. Arizona Governor Jack Williams commuted the sentence, to make her eligible for parole, after which she was recommended for clemency by the Arizona Board of Pardons and Parole and was released after a court hearing on December the 22nd. Winnie was instructed in no uncertain terms to leave town and never to tell her story or talk about any part of it ever again, and she returned to California to work for the family that had previously employed her. Some years later, she moved back to Phoenix and lived with a friend for her final years. She died in her sleep on October the 23rd, 1998, at the age of 93, 67 years after being arrested for murder in Los Angeles. In 2014, the April 1933 confession letter came to light that Winnie had handwritten for her insanity hearing to her lawyer. It showed that the murders were premeditated and that she was suffering from severe mental health issues. Her lawyer allegedly chose not to share it with the judge because it was too honest and raised new questions about her case. In the letter, which Winnie called her first and only confession, she wrote that she alone planned and carried out the murder of Leroy, with whom she was allegedly competing for Howerin's affection. She also said that she had not planned to kill Samuelson, but did so after Samuelson, alerted by the gunshot that killed Leroy, walked in on the murder scene and began fighting with Winnie. She also wrote that she had also acted alone in handling and transporting the bodies.